Okay. Okay, we're gonna start Chaf Amud Beis right after the Mishnah. Mishnah we spoke about. Well, first of all, thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day, and then the schos of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. In the Mishnah we spoke about someone that accepts on himself to be a Nazir, and someone hears him and says, "Me too, me as well." And someone else hears and says, me as well. So then all of them are Nazirim. Well, Yosef, Reish Lakish, Kamed, Rabbi Yehuda, Nasiya. Reish Lakish, you know who that is, right? That's the brother-in-law of Rabbi Yochanan. He's sitting in front of Rabbi Yehuda, Nasiya. I mean, Nasiya is the grandson of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. He was the took over the Messias, that seat. The Yosef Akama, Reish Lakish was saying, when we said that the first person says, I will be a Nazir, and the next person says, Va'ani, which means and I as well, and someone else says, Va'ani, and I as well, all of them have to be saying and I as well, that Va'ani, within the time frame of Teichadei Dibur, the amount of time that it takes to greet a teacher. Shalom Alecha Rabbi. Which means that you can really only get 2 people in there or 3 people in there to be able to say Va'ani, because otherwise the time frame passed and it's too long of a gap between when the person said I want to be a Nazir and the third person's Va'ani. Kama Teichadei Dibur. How big is it? How long would the Teichadei Dibur means within the amount of speech? What do you mean within the amount of speech? What is that? It says Kadei Shila Shalom. The amount of time it takes to greet someone. But Kama Kadei Shila Shalom. How long does it take to greet someone? It says Kadei Shomer Shalom Talmud L'Rab. The amount of time it takes for a student to greet the teacher. So Shalom Alecha Rabbi. And you greet, that amount of time would be the amount of time that you could be able to say and I as well. So the first person says,
you gotta be nice to people and say hello, basically.
No, that's in the Torah. Over here, what we're saying is that we're measuring time by how long it takes to say a certain greeting. Peace unto you, master or teacher. And that's the amount of time that a person has to be able to attach himself to the first person that said, I will be a Nazir. That's the amount of time that the second person has to be able to say, I as well. Otherwise, he has to make the full statement on his own. Because if it takes too long, then what he said, I as well to what? So in order to attach himself to the first statement, it has to be within that time frame. No, well, the time frame, once the first person says, I will be a Nazir, the timer starts. And then everyone else that's going to say has to say it within that time. Yeah, we're not saying here that each one starts it over. We're not saying that. Right.
Can they do it as a chorus?
Yeah.
Like one.
Yeah. They have to be all at once.
Yeah, all at once.
Okay. So Amalei, Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya says to Reish Lakish, Tov leishavkes Ravcha letalmida. The interesting comment. He says, let's say the teacher is walking by right when the student is there. And right when the person says, I want to be a Nazir, the teacher walks by. The student, of course, has to greet the teacher. So he's going to say, peace unto you, teacher, Shalom Alecha Rabbi. And it's going to be too late. He won't be able to say that I'm a Nazir together with the first one. He won't be able to add it in because he missed his chance because he had to greet the teacher. I don't care what the problem is. So say Harini Nazir on his own,
Yeah.
like as if this is like a whole issue. Anyway, turns out that what Rabbi Yehuda was saying is that no, you do have a little bit more of a chance. You have a little bit extra time. Great Taisvis explained this was that Teich de Dibur would only give the first three people a chance to say Va'ani and I as well. The fourth person would already be, that already takes too long. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya is adding in that it could be a fourth person as well, but not a fifth person, because you want to give them a little bit more time to be able to say, to greet the teacher plus also. Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a support. We're on top of page 21. You have
Is
a
this Kafer here?
Oh, wow, interesting. Where is Tzipori? Must be in the north, right?
He was the son of, I'm sure he's the son
Yeah.
of Rabbi Yehuda.
Where's Tzipori though? Where's the city? Okay. Tani Nami Hachi, it was also taught in the Brisa that you only have Teichadidi with that time frame. Misha Marini Nazir, someone that says, I want to be a Nazir, Visham Chaverei, his friend hears. Visha Kedei Dibur, and he waits the amount of time it takes to say greetings unto you, master. But Amar Vani, and then he says Vani. So who also have a Chaver and Mutter?
Yes, but that fits northern Israel in the lower Galilee.
Uh-huh.
It's very Tiberius.
So the person that delayed from saying, and I as well, he doesn't become a Nazir. But Kama Kadei Dibur, how much is that amount of time? The amount of time it takes to greet the teacher. Now the Gemara says, let's say that we can support Rish Lakish from our Mishnah as well. Besides for a Brisa, but maybe we have a support from our Mishnah. It says Mishamar, we're quoting the Mishnah now. Mishamar Reini Nazir, if someone says that I want to be a Nazir, I'm accepting on myself the Nazirus. Shama Chaveri, his friend here is Vamar Vani. His friend says, and I as well. And then there's another friend that says, and I as well. Vasulai, and you don't have any more. It doesn't keep going. It doesn't say, and another one says Vani. It doesn't say another one Vani. It doesn't continue on. It just has that first two. So you see that you can't have more than that, because more than that would have been too large of a gap between the original statement and when the person's saying, and I as well. That's a proof from the Mishnah, the fact that it only gives us two people that are saying Vani and not more than that. Now, what's going on here? There's two or three before we're saying that there's three. Someone mentioned this. I think Taisvis mentioned.
So are they saying you can't have more than two others respond in unison, saying that they themselves will also be a Nazir?
But I can only have it. What we're saying is that the reason why the Mishnah limits its examples to just two people is because it's following Rish Lakish that says that more than that it's going to be too large of a gap. Taisus asks that according to Rish Lakish it should say Vani 3 times.
That in order for it to work, how Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, it would say it would have to say 4 times.
I would say 4 times. Yeah, this gives an answer that, of course, it means 3 times, but there's no chiddush in the third one. But according to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, it should have said 4. Okay. So the Gemara says about this type of proof, the fact that we didn't give another example. It says, Tana ki ruchla lechashav v'lezel. Is the Tana a peddler that's going to announce and go? I think sometimes you have these guys in the 770, they're collecting for something. So every person that comes in, they want to announce again. They're collecting for, I don't know, release time or something. Here they go. Release time is donate over here. They keep announcing every second again. Release time. Then that's what the Gemara is saying. Does the Tana have to keep saying va'ani, va'ani? You just keep going on and on for every possible example that keep going. I gave you two examples. I gave you one example, the first guy and the second guy, and that's good enough. Doesn't have to. It's not a peddler that he keeps after announcing his what he's selling. The Gemara says if that's the case, then why does it have to say? It's supposed to be l'shemin and hachi probably. Let it just say once. Why does it have to say twice? So it says hachinami umishum. Something wrong with the language over there. Something missing. L'shemin and hachi. Hachinami. That's where the comma is supposed to go. You have a pencil on you with an eraser?
Achinami
Yeah.
comma.
You have an eraser? Okay, good.
Already there.
I thought the question mark too early. That's better. So, Mishum, Iktani Seifa, Hutter Harisha and Hutter Kulan. Really, what it wants to say is in the later case of the Mishnah. It says that when you have one of the people that became a Nazir, you have one of them annulling his vow. So what happens to the rest of these dominoes? So it depends where. So it says, if the first one annulled the vow and the other people said, and I as well, and the first one already was annulled. So Hutter Rishon, Hutter Kulam, then they all become annulled. Hutter Achron, if the later one annuls the vow, then Ha'achron Matar V'Kulan Asur, then everyone before him is prohibited. Michlal, but this implies you see, because we use the language of Hutru Kulan in Hutter Achrain, the last one, the first one, all the rest, we were using that language, so we couldn't just say that there was one other person, because then it would just say the other one. We wanted to say all of them, so we had to have at least three, the first one, and then plus another two. We're able to use the expression of all of them.
Yeah, because we learned this yesterday. It's the exact same thing. One person makes a nether, and then you have everyone else following.
Right.
The one subsequent to
Right.
the first one.
Right. Then it would
then
it would
everyone
fall
else
off.
still stands though. It's
If-
just the first one. Then it,
Depends if they made themselves dependent on him. If they said I also,
yeah, they said I
so
also.
then when the first person is annulled, the other ones get annulled too.
Right, but not the ones after him because they're individual people
Oh.
that attach themselves first.
No, 1 second.
If the first one annulled, the others will get nullified, and then the last one annulled, like he's the only one.
What about like the second one?
Probably the last
Yeah,
one. get the
we're gonna
nullified.
learn that it's wherever it is on this. There's dominoes. Wherever it is, if the middle one or the ones after him all fall off, fall down.
No,
What you're
depends
quoting,
what you're saying.
How is what the Gemara was thinking, that if the annulment came from the husband, which we're going to discuss soon, then maybe it doesn't retroactively take it off. Maybe it only
Right.
takes it off from then on, and then it was not going to knock away. That's another point. But if it was taken off, if the vow was annulled by the sage, then it retroactively takes off the vow. Then there was nothing there to hold on to for the second person to say, I as well. I as well to what? The thing that disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they're responding to the person right before.
Yeah. Jesus asks, it's all like this loop, because we wanted to say this. I wanted to say that it's all of them, and therefore, why did you want to say that? Just say that it's two. That this one annulled it. The second person is. Why do you have to get into that?
If the second one nullified, is the third person like attaching to the first or attaching to the
Okay, that's the Gemara's question coming up. Hold it. Yeah, you're about to ask the Gemara's question. Ibailahu. That's what we're holding, right? Bailo? The Gemara asked the question. It's exactly the logic. You see how the Gemara, it uses like almost this logic then, the follow-up logic. So what happens next? Bailo, the yeshiva had a question. Chad b'chavrei mitvas. Does each one get attached to his friend? It means the first person says, I want to be a Nazir. I'm accepting on myself Nazirs. Then someone says, I too. Then another one says, and I too, I as well. So does the third person attach himself to the second person that said I as well? And he's, it's like dominoes. Or is it one big domino up here? And then everyone else is all in one row underneath, and they're all attaching themselves to the first person. That from the Gemara before, it was clear that they're not attaching themselves to one another. It's all to the first person. Because it said, Rish Lakish said, you only have Techdei Dibur. Okay, let's take a look.
Just apply this case from century. I don't know if Nidarim previous stuff.
We had the same thing in the Dharam.
Concept.
Right. Right. It would be the same concept, but and the question would apply. Do we say that Chad b'chabri mitzvah, say Dilma b'kama mitzvah, or maybe they're just grabbing onto the first one. Everyone is attaching themselves to the first one. The Gemara says, "L'may nafkamina." What's the difference? If one is attached to the next as like a link chain, or dominoes, or if we say that it's everything is attached to the first one. If you can do this continuously. If you say that one attached to his friend, so then mitzvahs and vas and lo'olam, then everyone just has to do it like this. So you all line up, and each person has up until techdei dibur to say I too, I as well, and then the next one has a little gap of 2 seconds, no more, to say I as well. It can go on li'olam forever, all day. So but if you say that they're all attached to the first person, then you only have up until peace unto you, master, and then that's it. No one else can attach themselves to that.
Those differences.
That's an interesting point.
This is an analogy to doing something from a Rebbe or from Shliach. Or Shliach of a Shliach.
Right. The Rebbe spoke about Shliach is a Shliach. And one Shliach makes another Shliach. And then I think there was a discussion about, does he make him a Shliach of the Shliach, or does he make him a Shliach of the original? There's a discussion about that.
Maybe two things can be in true at once.
I don't remember.
Tomorrow I want to.
Maybe to the original generations like they make
Right.
And from what I've heard, like there's generations.
Okay. Okay, there's also some wishful thinking in there.
But it would kind of like it would line up with this, that they all come from the
Right.
one.
Right. If you take the second approach, which seems to be the approach that Rish Lakish was taking, and Rabbi didn't see it. Tashema. Come and listen. Harini Nazir, V'shama Chaverei, V'amar Vani. Someone says, I'm accepting on myself to be a Nazir, and his friend hears him saying that, and he says, and I as well. And someone else hears and says, and I as well. Sulay Midi. And that's the last of the cases of the examples of the Mishnah. It doesn't say that another friend showed up and said, I as well. Obviously, they can't do that. Why not? Because they're all attaching themselves to the first. They're not linking themselves to the one that preceded them. It could have gone on forever. We could have had this massive Mishnah that would have went on forever if they were linking themselves. So it didn't do that. Obviously, it's because they're all attaching themselves to the first one. The Gemara says, what? Tana kiruchel lichashiv v'lezel. You want the Tana to be a peddler and just to say every possible example and keep announcing everything. This is what I'm selling. This is what I'm selling. To say an I2, an I2, an I2, just to keep doing that. The Gemara says, well, if that's the case, that you're not supposed to, that the Tana is not going to do that, then why does it just give one example? Why does it have to give two examples? Well, I did diktani hutar rishon hutar kulan hutar achan mutar kol nasur mechal dekem tzai mishmachik tani vani vani. Because it wanted to say all of them become permissible, or they don't all become permissible. So it had to have a middle case, otherwise it would have said the second one becomes permissible. So in order to use this sort of language, we have to have at least two examples after the initial person. Okay, so we're still looking for an answer to when each one says an I as well, if they're attaching themselves to the first person, or if they're linking themselves to the one that preceded them. Tashima. Come and listen. It says, Hutar Rishon Hutar Kulan. If the first person annulled his vow, so then everyone that followed him also annulled. Their vows are also annulled. Rishon Hudasharu. It's only if the first person annulled his vow, then all the rest are mutter. But if the middle person annulled his vow, then we don't say that to everyone else is permissible. Why? Because everyone else did not attach himself to the middle person. They attached themselves back to the first person. See? So everyone is attached to the first person. Why? Where are we getting this from? Because it didn't give me another case about the middle person annulling the vow. It sounds like it implied that only if the first person annulled the vow, then everyone would be permissible. Didn't say the middle person would have the people that followed him permissible. Shema mina b'kama mitzvasin. You see, it's as if that all of them are attaching themselves to the first person. Okay. Eimalach, say to you, usually it's liyolam eimalach. Here it's eimalach liyolam.
In theory, if you have, let's say you have someone's wife and he says she's going to be a pastor, and everyone else attaches themselves to her, and her husband
annuls the vow.
His wife's.
Right.
That
so there's two things. There's 2 points here. When a husband annuls the wife's vow, that's different when a sage annuls the vow. When a sage annuls the vow, it retroactively removes it. When the husband annuls his wife's vow, there's a discussion if it's retroactive or not. If it's retroactive, then everyone else would be annulled. If it's called megas gaias, if it just chops it off from that point, when he says it, then they've attached themselves to an actual Nazira, at least at that time, and they continue to be Nazirim. So the Gemara says, Lailam, really, really we can say that each one is attaching themselves to the one that preceded them. Because why did it say only the case where the first person annulled his vow, then all the rest? If each one is attaching themselves to the one that preceded him, then even if the middle one annulled his vow, the ones that followed would be annulled. Why didn't it use that case? Well, it wanted to say huchukulan, that they're all annulled. Because if it would say the middle one, then the first one wasn't annulled. It wanted to give me that full scenario where the first one only one annuls the vow, and then everyone else becomes mutter. Okay, that's why it chose that case. Now, Tashima, come and listen. It's called diukim seisrim. You have implications that contradict each other. We chose the first case of the Mishnah, and from the first case of the Mishnah, well, not the first case, but the first scenario where one of them gets annulled, all the ones that followed become annulled as well. But since it didn't say the middle one annuls, that tells me that all the ones that follow are all attached to the first one. That's why it didn't choose that case. Okay, then it gave me an answer. Now you go to the last case, to the end of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that if the last one annuls his vow, then he's annulled, but the first ones are not annulled. Why didn't it tell me if the middle one annuls as well?
Oh, yeah.
So that must be because if the middle one would annul as well, then the ones that follow would have annulled their vow. There would be annulled automatically because the middle one. That tells me that each was linked to the other. So from the two parts of the Mishnah, we have two different
And they're both
implications.
basically insinuations.
Right,
Like,
right. Right. What's implied? So, like Achrina Basri, because there's no one afterwards. Avalem Tzoydik Achrina Basri. But if the middle one annulled his vow, there is someone that comes after him. Mystery, he would be annulled as well. That person after him would be annulled. It's implied that he would be annulled. Shmamina, Chavri Mitzvahs. We see that each one is linked to the one that preceded him. Seem to have an answer to our question. How does this work when each one says Vani, Vani?
So why are we going with this second opinion that there is no attachment for the first one?
Why are we accepting one of the
I mean, I hear why, but both make a good point.
right? Right. Well, we're trying each one out and seeing if it's conclusive.
Because like now it says that if the middle one annuls, like the last one is annulled as well. So it seems like they connect to each other.
Right.
So then why doesn't the time counts from the first one? Like that shows like it proves
Right.
like they're taken to the first one, but to the second.
No. If they're all linked, the first one links to the second links to the third, the opposite. Third links to the second links to the first. If it works with as a link, so then the time is there's no limit on the time because each one is restarting.
That's like if the second one is nullified, the third one
Would be nullified as well.
yeah, but that's like if they're a chain.
That's if they're a chain.
But from the timing, it seems like it's not a chain. It looks like they're both attached to the first.
No, we said that it's dependent one on the other. If they're attached to the first, then you have only the time from the first. If they're attached to the as a link, so then the timing can restarts with each one. Right, it's endless. No, we had it appeared from Reish Lakish that they're all attached to the first. Now the yeshiva has a question, ignoring Reish Lakish. Okay, and now we have a question. Now we're trying to work it out without bringing Reish Lakish in. How are we going to prove this? We're going to prove this from the Mishnayos themselves. Reish Lakish is later. Reish Lakish is an Amira. We're looking for a source from the Mishnah. And we're looking for an earlier source, something that preceded that. Okay. The Gemara says that you don't have really a proof from this, that one is linked to the other, even though it's implied from the fact that it didn't say that case. Laila May Malach, really, I could say to you, become a mitzvah, and that everyone is attached to the first one. But my Achan Diktani, when it said if the last one annuls the vow or the last one is annulled, it's really talking about himself. It's really talking about the middle one. It didn't actually mean the last one. Why did Tani Reisha? Why did Tani Reisha and Tani Achan? But because the first part of the Mishnah said the first one, so the second part of the Mishnah said the last one. But really, we mean the middle one as well. Okay. Tashma. Come and listen. Tanya Behedya was taught clearly in the Brisa. You want to learn on the roof, right? Harishan. Now we're going to have a clear proof. Look at this. The first one annulled his vow. Everyone that follows their vow is annulled. The last one annuls his vow. The last one is annulled, and all the ones that preceded him are still prohibited. Here we have a brisa that says clearly, if the middle one annuls his vow, what do you think it's going to say? Okay. From him and on is permissible, and from what preceded him is prohibited. We had this once before, right? We mentioned this. So no, so they're all attached one to another. Well, because since the middle one annuls his vow,
The rest are still.
no, the one before him are intact, but the ones after him are annulled. That means that it's a link. Shema mina chad b'chavri mitzvah shema mina. We see from here that each one is attached to his friend, and they're not all attached to the first one.
Just because it was suggested before that, because they didn't talk about.
Yeah. But that could take you both ways. So here we have each one is attached to the one before. Now it doesn't actually fit with Rish Lakish.
No, I know that's why. Like I was very convinced that Rish Lakish.
So this is interesting. I don't see that we would paskin. What do you have the halacha over there by Rish Lakish? Do they tell you what the halacha is? And go turn a page back to Rish Lakish. See if it says if the halacha is like Rish Lakish or not. Does it quote a halacha there? It doesn't say halacha. Oh, it just says Kadei Shila Shalom what the time is. Yeah, it seems like we won't go like Rish Lakish. Let's see if someone spells that out.
And then here on the halacha, it mentions about the fourth and the fifth, like time resets.
Time resets, right? Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the rabbis in the yeshiva. Yeah, those days the yeshiva wasn't young people. They were people that were working and they were part of the yeshiva. They had time when after they would plant, while they were waiting for it to grow, they would go to study. Okay, now the Gemara says, we quote the Mishnah. Harini Nazir v'shama chaver rama pi kapi kapiv sari kasare. Says my mouth should be like his mouth. Someone said he's going to be a Nazir. Someone else says my mouth should be like his mouth. My hair should be like his hair, etc. So he becomes a Nazir. The Gemara asks, Mishum damar pi kapiv v'sari kasare are a Nazir. That's how it works. He says my mouth should be like his mouth. My hair should be. So he becomes a Nazir v'raminu. We have a contradiction to that. We're on top of 21b. Yadai Nazira, Ragli Nazira. If someone says my hand should be a Nazir, my foot should be a Nazir. Leia Merklum. He didn't say anything. Reishi Nazira, Kvedi Nazira. Funny, he says the liver comes to alcohol. It says my head should be a Nazir, my liver should be a Nazir. Harith a Nazir, then he's a Nazir.
Yesterday afternoon in Yaakov about something about what each word.
Oh, what it represents. Zaklal, here's the rule. He has to say something that his life is dependent on. That part of his body is a Nazir. Then he becomes a Nazir. He can't just say his mouth or his hair. His hair, his life isn't dependent. Says Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, the Amar Hachi, this is what he meant. This is what he's saying. Yaseh pika piv miyayin. My mouth is like his mouth from drinking wine. Sari kasari milagos. He didn't mean that just my mouth is a Nazir. He meant that my mouth should not drink wine like his mouth. That's what he meant. And then he was accepting on himself he's a Nazir. But did we say that if someone says that he's not going to drink wine, that he becomes a full Nazir? Yeah, it was only Reb Shimon that said it was Machlekes Reb Shimon and right. If someone accepts on himself to be a Nazir from drinking wine, he becomes a full Nazir. Right. Yeah, that was the case. That's because she was avoiding to drink the next cup, but in a regular case, if someone says, "I'm not going to drink wine. I'm going to be a Nazir from drinking wine," he becomes a full Nazir and not just drinking wine.
By the way, I think the reason you mentioned covered, because you could have said,
Right.
could have said, obviously,
Could have said the heart.
Let's say kidneys, all right? Because there are two kidneys. So if he lost one kidney, he'd still have the other, but he has only one liver. So he couldn't live without the liver, all right?
Right.
But he could live without his hand or without his hair.
Right. I don't know what it means. He could live without his mouth.
Live without his mouth.
He could eat.
How do you eat?
Put it to.
Put a tube in. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I took that as talking.
Can't live without talking.
Some people, yeah.
Cohen did.
He didn't talk?
Oh,
He went every year for a 41-day period without talking.
Uh-huh.
Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, wow.
got a better answer.
I don't think that has to do with Naziris. That's because he was,
He was a hitter.
we had this guy that showed up in yeshiva. He came late. It was El. He comes late. Anyway, he took on himself that he doesn't talk. The whole Aser Simei Tshuva. He never introduced himself. We didn't know his name. We called him Nu'ah. Because that's because that's all he told us was Nu'ah. We didn't know his name. That's his nickname was Nu'ah. Did you see Nu'ah?
So it turned out, what was his name?
I don't remember.
I know.
I left after Rosh Hashanah. I never found out his name. Yeah, that's how the Gemara concludes, that he's not gonna, that his mouth should be like his mouth, that he won't drink wine.
Give it totally different types. You know, he could have said, I won't, how's it start off? He says, I'll be a Nazir without, like you could say, without bread.
Right.
Lo alechem yichyeh ha'adam, right? But then you take the rest of us, Ki Api Hashem. So, and with the P is really Hashem. You can't.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. The only thing is that here we're looking for where the P was not life. His life wasn't dependent on his mouth.
And when it comes to Hasidus, he's saying
I don't know if everyone is going to agree with that.
You're gonna live with
every
that.
time we have a machlokes, not
Take
every
away
time,
his mouth,
every once
take
in a while
away
it
his
says, oh, you can also switch it the other way.
Okay. Harini Nazira V'Shama Ba'alvamar V'Ani Eni Yachla Haper. We mentioned this Gemara. If a wife says that she's going to be a Nazira, that's a Nazir for a woman, and the husband says, "I as well." So now he can't annul his wife's Naziris. There's a question: why not? Is it? Well, before he asks, why not? First, the Gemara asks a general question, and then we'll see. Baal miyakaraker. When a husband annuls the vow, does he uproot it entirely? Just like a chacham, does he uproot it entirely? Or maybe he just chops it off from that point when he annuls it. He stops it. He doesn't uproot it retroactively. The minaf kamina, what's the difference? So the example that we give is a different example. A woman accepts on herself to be a nazir, and her friend says, and I as well. Now the husband of the first woman says, annuls, this was your example, annuls the vow that his wife took. Now there's this friend that's like in limbo. What about this friend? What happens there? If it's uprooted from retroactively, so hahinami ishtarya, then this woman will also become permissible. Ishtarai. And if you say that it chops it off just from then and on, so ishtarai, the wife is permissible, but chaverta asira, but her friend is still prohibited because she attached herself to a nazira, and that point in time was still a nazira. It was only from afterwards that she
What
wasn't.
about her husband? Husband of the second.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the second doesn't have a husband.
Because the husband annulled the first one's vow, his wife's vow, and not a well or something like that. So
Yeah, exactly. If it would have been a chacham, then we know what the answer is.
But we learned that a husband is not prayer.
I mean, that's what we learned. Yeah,
So the second one
it's going to be prohibited.
still has it.
Right. That's what I believe the conclusion is. But our Gemara is going back through that, and all the times that we mentioned this, that we were quoting the conclusion, but this is actually the source of this question. How does that work with the husband? So what's the din? Tashima, come and listen. Hareini Nazir v'shama ba'ilava marvani. The woman says, I want to be a Nazir. The husband hears and says, I too. Any yachalafer, he can't annul it. Okay. Isal kadaita bal megas guy is, if you say that the husband only chops off the vow from then and on, he only stops it, but he doesn't retroactively take it off. Why can't he take off his wife's vow? Take off his wife's vow, but he'll still be prohibited, which is no problem. He can't annul his own vow, but his wife's vow he can annul, and his vow will still be intact. It must be that he retroactively takes off his wife's vow. If he takes off his wife's vow, he's going to end up taking off his vow. We don't want him to be able to annul his own vow, so therefore he can't take off his wife's vow either. Kumar says, you don't have to say that. Laila Megas guys, really, the vow gets removed by the husband only from then and on. It's not retroactive. So why can't he annul his wife's vow? But really, he could have. Behind the time of the Lematzi Mefer, the reason why he doesn't, even because when he says, and I too, as if he's saying that I like that you accepted that vow and I'm establishing the vow.
Did you mention why there's a difference between the power based in versus the power of the husband?
It mentioned before that the way the Bezdin annuls the vow is through regret. And when there's regret, it's as if the whole vow was taken by mistake.
She had understood the consequences.
Right.
Right. But
And so then the husband has nothing to do with her regret. He doesn't want it. So he stops it from whenever he doesn't want it. But if it's the regret, then the whole vow goes off because it's on the basis of the vow was a mistake. So then if this is the case, then Mar throws this in, I'm not sure why. If he wants, he can annul his establishing of her vow. And if he doesn't annul his establishing, then he can't annul it. There's a way of annulling the establishing. While he's at it, he might as well have just annulled his wife's vow with the sage, but whatever. Tashima, so come and listen. The Isha Shinadra ben Nazir, a woman that accepted on herself to be a Nazir b'frisha spemta, and she separated the animal that she's supposed to bring for the sacrifice. Here's going to be a problem. Everything seems to be going smooth. However, then the husband annulled her Nazirus. So the separating of the animal is now like, what happens with this animal? She used to be a Nazir. Now all of a sudden she's not. If the animal belonged to the husband, you see, the husband gives her permission to separate an animal if she needed that. But since she doesn't need it, doesn't need the animal, so the husband never gave it to her. So she separated someone else's animal. Doesn't become sanctified. It wasn't even hers. You can't go around sanctifying other people's things. So if she needed it, then the husband would have given her permission for that, but she doesn't need it. So just put it back in the flock. If the animal is hers that she separated, then achatas tamas, the sin offering, needs to die. You can't bring it as a sacrifice, you can't eat it, just has to be left to die. But if you say that the husband retroactively takes off the Naziras, so tepuk l'chulin, then this animal was nothing because she consecrated an animal based on the fact that she was a Nazir. She wasn't even a Nazira. She wasn't a Nazir. So the animal would just be chulin. Elav shmamina bal megas guys. It must be that the husband stops the Naziras, but doesn't retroactively take it off. Where do we see this? From the fact that her animal doesn't go back to chulin, but to be a regular mundane animal, and it has a problem. I just have a problem because there must have been something there at the beginning that the husband doesn't remove. The Gemara says it's not a good proof because really the husband removes it from the beginning. Why do we have this animal die? even like tzricha kapara, because since now she doesn't need an atonement. We have a rule that if a chatas is designated and the owner of that chatas passed away, so you don't bring the sacrifice, you just leave it to die, the animal to die. You can't eat it, you can't bring it as a sacrifice because the atonement is not necessary anymore.
Just let it
So
free.
here you can't let it free
Oh, because someone might
because
touch
it's
it
a
and-
sacrifice, but it's a sacrifice that can't be brought because the owner died.
So
So
it dies of what?
he just died.
Doesn't
She did a
it go-
sin.
Doesn't
He
it go
designates the
into-
sacrifice and then dies. The children don't bring that sacrifice.
Right. But
So-
how does
but what
something
happens
just
to the
die
animal?
on its own?
Mad
No.
cow disease.
No, the owner of the sacrifice died.
Right,
He died from he had a heart attack.
right. But his
The
korban,
animal, you just leave it to die.
leave it to die.
Yeah.
You
It's not
starve
gonna
it.
die. It'll just go and eat.
No,
some
it's
Not immoral.
you leave it
grass.
in a place where it.
Really
Isn't this where you put the animals that were hectish, that no longer can be used? They have a special grazing field and they just stay there.
I think it's more than
not
that.
the same place.
I think it's more than that. I think they don't feed it or something.
They put in a pen without.
Yeah.
Yes, that was.
Yeah, now it's unnecessary.
If you
So-
had a court,
so,
right,
yeah,
comes back.
Exactly. So, but we're comparing this now to the woman that was a Nazir and her husband annulled a vow, that she's like someone that already had a kapara, that someone that died and doesn't need the sacrifice. So that's why we leave it to die. It's not because the husband. We wanted to say that obviously the husband only stops it. He doesn't retroactively. Could be that he retroactively takes it off, and we leave it to die because it's like the owner already had an atonement. Tashma, come and listen. Another proof. A woman accepts on herself to be a nazir, but she still drinks wine and she goes to cemeteries. She gets lashes, 40 lashes. What's going on? If we're talking about that, the husband didn't annul it. So what are you telling me? Of course she goes, it's a regular sin. It must be that the husband annulled it. If you say that it's retroactive, so then she never really did anything wrong ever. So why does she get Malkus? It's coming to teach me that because of what she did, the husband can't take that off what she did before. You can only stop it from now on. And that's why she gets Malkus. Says, really? The husband uproots it from originally. The husband uproots it originally, then she shouldn't get Malkus. So we said like this, that we asked, are we talking about that the husband uprooted it or the husband didn't uproot it? We said, obviously the husband uprooted it, or else what are you telling me? If the husband didn't uproot it, it's a regular sin. It says, no, the husband didn't uproot it. But in the Seifa, it says, that if the husband did uproot it, and she didn't know that he uprooted it. You mentioned this sometime. She doesn't get lashes, even though she thinks that she's doing a sin, but she doesn't get lashes. So Taninami Reisha Seifega. So that's why the original case says that she does get lashes. But we're talking about a case where the husband did not uproot it. And you asked, so why does it have to say that? It's telling me in contrast to the later case where it was necessary to say it. Let's leave it over here. Yeah.
3 minutes.
Wow.
That clock is off. That throws me off.